Aloha, this is State Representative Bob McDermott coming to you, I guess, with McDermott's message. And today we're going to talk about Campbell High School. That is the largest high school in the state, a little over 3,000 students. It was built for 1800, I think back around 1960 or so. We'll get the exact date. But there haven't been really any major improvements over the years, and as you know, the Eva Plain is very hot. And for years we have talked about air conditioning. We said the classrooms were like ovens that these kids had to learn in. There's about 40 children in each classroom for the teachers. The teachers don't have their own homeroom, so to speak. They have to float. It's very problematic. The school is overcrowded. The legislature, which I'm a member of, has known about this for a long time. And we have done, surprisingly, nothing. And so now, where we've been talking about the heat abatement for years, we've nibbled around the edges, just nibbled around the edges, not committed to cooling those classrooms. Well, now we have a problem. We're not even talking about cooling the classrooms anymore. Now with the projected growth in the Eva Plain, we're talking about we don't even have enough classrooms. And this is coming to a crisis situation. So with me today to talk about this and other things are Vice Principal Shayne Greenland. Thank you, Shayne, for coming.
You're welcome. Thank you.
He's a real champion and a warrior for the children, and that's why we have him here. And a good friend of mine on the Eva Neighborhood Board, a member of the Lions Club. Lions, if you know anything about Eva, does everything with our good friend Kurt Favela. My good friend Bryan Jeremiah. Bryan, thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me.
I appreciate you both. Shayne, I'm going to start with you. I want to get the school's perspective. And then I want to get Bryan's perspective as a community member, a longtime resident. What do you, is what I said true in the opening, that you don't have enough space?
Very true. So, you know, like you said, this year we have about 17 floating teachers. To describe floating that means they go into teachers' rooms when they're on preps. So those teachers don't get to take ownership into the education that's happening. You know, they don't have their own room. They have to move. They pack up. They put it in a cart with wheels, and they move around. So, you know, with that being said, some of the hard parts is that teacher morale. You know, teachers coming in to teach at Campbell, it's hard to develop that passion when you don't get to have that sense of ownership. Not having enough classrooms. You know, if we could have another building and even add 30 more classrooms, we may still be undersized. You know, well, to find space, Campbell's very limited in space. You know, where do we put a new building without taking something out, because we have portables in the majority of the empty spots.
So what is the standard ratio? The ideal ratio is, what is it? I mean, the ideal is 1-to-1, obviously. But in a high school setting, what is the national average? Is it 23 students per?
I think 25 to 30 would be ideal. Most teachers, I think, feel really comfortable with 30. We're pushing 35 to 40 in each of our classrooms.
And the classrooms are hot to begin with. And they're hot because of the poor design. They were built cheap and fast years ago, unlike schools that were built in Hawaii at the turn of the century, which they were smart enough to have high ceilings and rafters all around to let the air discharge. These things are concrete. They were cheap and fast. So that's the problem. Bryan is a longtime community member and a guy with a background in construction. First, could you verify what I just said? They were poorly designed concrete bunkers, and then the second is, what do you want to see as a community member?
Well, you're right, Bob, in the sense that the school was developed roughly in 1962, so which makes it about 53 years old, and there's really only been limited development since then with the construction of Sabre Hall. Right. But the original development, yes, it was dated. So to the time period, that's the type of construction they did. The ceilings were not high, so it actually retains heat rather than releases heat. So it's an old school type of construction. From a community aspect, it's not conducive for a good learning environment. It's already hot in Eva Beach. We all know that. We live there. Yeah, it's hot. I mean, even with the AC on. So can you imagine the environment for the children and the teachers that are in the classrooms day in and day out, especially on days when we don't have the trade winds. So for a lot of residents, their concern is that along with the congestion and the overcrowding with the schools as it exists, there's going to be an increased burden as years go on, including the continued development with Haseko and Gentry that's still developing around the corner.
Right.
So there's potentially another 2,000-3,000 more additional students that will be added to the school in the upcoming years.
People, one of the issues, and Shayne, it's really not your bailiwick, but we have development. This is the planned second city. We've all known about this since the mid-'70s. This is where growth is going to occur. And you have the rail coming in, which, that can alleviate increased traffic. But no one has talked about the DOE, and I don't mean to blame the DOE, because this is an issue the legislature should have funded this year. Should have been done this year, and we failed. I'll say we failed. My part, I didn't get it done. My colleagues and I all tried, but it didn't happen. And so how can the elected officials ignore your screaming needs? I don't want to put you on the spot. Have you shared your needs with the leadership in the DOE and the community legislators, I guess?
From a school standpoint, the DOE, I feel is trying to work with us the best they can. They're trying to solve solutions, without Rob and Peter to pay Paul. They need more money, and they need to earmark money that's going to alleviate the congestion at Eva Beach. We talk about 3,100 students when the facility is built for 2,000 students. That's another 1,000 students that the infrastructure has to try to maintain, like with restrooms. And even parking, if you've ever seen the parking problem at Eva Beach, we don't have enough parking. So if we look and we wait and we put things off much longer, by 2018, 2019, we're going to be pushing 3,800 students is the projection. Wow. So almost being at 4,000 students, and that's that's no more taking GEs. That's denying kids that want to come to Campbell because of the quality education we provide. We're going to be stuck. And what do we do with that 3,800 kids? We're already short classrooms. They're already too hot. Our gym's not big enough. We have to have 2 different assemblies. So how do you build that community effort and that continuity even in your school when you can't bring them all together at one time? It's a side note though, but you noticed it with Radford High School in the late 60s and early 70s. And now you're seeing it with Campbell as well. When the population of the schools gets so big, and this is a side note, you start winning state championships, and Campbell just won the girls softball, the boys baseball, and Radford was winning all the state championships in the late 60s, early 70s, football, wrestling, basketball, because you have 4,000 kids there. Now, it's not an ideal learning situation, and you're a father, I'm a father. I feel, and I want your thoughts on this, that in a school that big, it's bigger than HPU. You have children who want individuality. Hey, I'm special, look at me. Everybody wants to feel special, right? We all adults, we all feel special now because we know who we are. We're secure in that. But you send your student to Campbell, it's 4,000 people. How do you make sure as a dad they don't get lost in the shuffle?
Well, Bob, that's an interesting question. It's going to have its challenges because you have that volume of students there. But I think more importantly, it goes back to what Shayne was sharing earlier. I think with the opportunity for increased classroom sizes and advancement in technology as far as our ability to teach the kids, in and of itself, there will be an opportunity for the kids to actually feel more closely identified with who they are. Because I know that it can be overwhelming. I think right now, without it, it's even a bigger problem because they're overcrowded in classrooms that should normally have no more than 30 students in a class.
So you just pointed something out that's very good. I'd never even thought of it. It's kind of a double-edged sword, right? Because you have so many students, you have double the opportunities to get involved in good stuff. Double the good clubs, double the opportunity to be exposed to new ideas, to meet great people. That's the positive aspect of it. You have double the athletes that you can choose from for a football team or a basketball team or a baseball team, which you won the girls championship, boys championship. You've got some great wrestlers. You've got great swim team. It could go on and on about Campbell. But then the other side of that is that despite your best effort, Shayne, with that many kids, there's double the opportunities to get in trouble as well, right? I mean, he's not going to say that because that's his job to make sure that he's the hammer.
But you know, the thing is, what I see is we have a lot of great kids at Campbell High School. No matter where you go, you're always going to have those, you know, that slim percentage that, you know, chooses not to come to school or not want to. And it is, like you said, though, how do we find ways to excite them and find their path? Because no kid wants to be not successful. No kid, you know, is choosing not to want to go to college because he doesn't feel he's smart enough. It's finding that passion of what excites him that's going to make him want to be a productive member. All kids want to work. They all want to make money. They all want to do things. With 4,000 students and not having enough space, when do we find time to tap into those kids and make sure we don't lose those? And that's the nice thing with hiring good teachers and having great, you know, a great administration, but having great members of the community in creating those community partnerships and developing things, because education just doesn't have to take place on Campbell campus. It can also take place out in doing internships and all kinds of stuff. So we're going to start looking at a lot of different avenues. But the biggest thing on campus is how do we keep those teachers engaged and excited and have passion for what they're teaching so that the kids can feel like they're being supported in what their efforts are going to be to go on and be college and career ready.
You were a teacher as well, right?
I was.
Okay, so if you teach, how many classes a day would you teach? 6?
It varied depending on what school you went to, anywhere from 4 to 6.
So you're, because I taught in some college courses, you when you're up there, you're performing, right? Because you got to keep them engaged, entertained, and transmit the knowledge at the same time, right? Otherwise, 88 degrees, they're going to fall asleep, right? So it's an exhausting job, isn't it not?
It is, and you know, and kids are a great judge of character. They know if you care. I mean, and they'll see it. I mean, and if you do care, and get them to buy in, they're going to care. But if they see that, you know, we always complaining because it's too hot, it's this or it's that, it opens up those lines for a kid to have excuse. We make the best of the situation that we have, and we still get fairly decent results at Campbell, but the results could be better if we gave our teachers the necessary tool, you know, all the bells and whistles of what they should have, of what everybody else has in the state. Education would be even better at Campbell.
Let me ask you a question. We're about the same age, and I want to get your thoughts on it, and then you can tell me how the reality of life on a high school campus, what is it like today? Because I know it's remarkably different than when I went to school, when you went to school. When I went to school, you had the jocks, I went on the mainland, these were the kind of the groups that people correlated to. You had the athletes, you had the brainiacs, I guess, the kids really motivated to do off the chart scholastically. You had the jocks, the athlete, and then you kind of had, we had VOTEC schools. So you had the kids who went into technical school, farming, cosmetology, plumbing, pipe, which, let me stop there for a minute. I think we should have that here. We should have vocational schools, and you know the concept I'm talking about, Shayne.
By far.
For kids that can access it in the high school, don't you, Bryan?
Absolutely, absolutely. Part of the problem is that the community is not as engaged as they would be had they truly believed in the state's ability to provide that vehicle that would enable the kids to get that good quality education, especially within Campbell, because they've been waiting for years and years and years and years, myself being a long-time resident. And we don't see any hope on the horizon or any proof that the state is serious about taking initiative to make these changes. You know, and point being that we need money to improve the school. So when you get the community input behind that, as a result, you get good support for the kids who then gravitate towards these different clubs, these different groups, these technical schools, these different outlets that produce good quality educators and, you know, contributing members to the public later on.
So the way it would work, but local, so if you bring that up here, the response you'll get from the bureaucrats is, well, they can already enroll in community college and work through their counselor to get some credits. That's not the model. The model is you have Capolay and Campbell, and those two schools would share a technical school. And so children at Campbell, the kids who are on the edge, I don't want to go to college, I love wrenching on cars. Okay, well, you can become an auto mechanic, and in 10th grade you go to the technical school for half a day. They're really motivated to do that, or be in construction, or be a cosmetologist, whatever it is. They don't have to go to community college then, because they get that in high school. And they come to Campbell half a day and get their basics, reading, writing, math, arithmetic. And here's the other thing. That keeps a kid who's on the borderline of disengaging motivated to finish and get their diploma.
Bob, if I may speak to that, one of the good aspects of a technical school is the simple fact that a lot of kids that gravitate towards that, towards trade school, they end up later on down the line seeking further education because they are so entrenched and involved and appreciative of that trade which they love, that they are now seeking higher education to actually be better at that trade.
Oh, an expert.
Yeah, to be an expert, exactly. So there is a very large niche in just about every school here locally, and especially at Campbell, where you are going to have students that will gravitate towards those particular industries.
Well, that, you know, and that's a dream of mine, the VOTEC schools, because I've seen it on the mainland and they work splendidly. I went to a school that had that. But so now back to the departure. So you have the jocks, the academics, and then in my day you had the VOTEC kids, and then you had the stoners, kids who did drugs, and it was smoke dope, get drunk. And you had some real hardcore folks there, but most of them weren't hardcore, but they were the bad kids, so to speak. Are those groups still kind of in play? Do you still have the athletes? Do you still have the academic folks? You don't have VOTEC folks, but do you still have kids who like to dabble in the...
Yeah, and one of the things, kind of going back to your question before, like with the vocational stuff, is one of the things we're trying to start now at Campbell is that the college and career pathways. So developing structured pathways in which a kid wants to go through. So if they want to go through like an engineering, they're going to take these classes so they can kind of see that excitement, getting them out into the community and seeing what is engineering about. You know, do we start a cosmetology where we start cosmetology at school and partner, you know, with Fantastic Sam's? We're looking into all those because we want to tap into what's exciting and what's passionate for kids.
Right.
We're here to develop that student. Again, the student is our product. We have to make them as valuable and highly effective as possible with whatever they want to pursue, so that when they go to the community, they can be successful. Talking about the groups at school, one of the largest groups we have on our campus right now is the band. We have over 200 kids in our band, and I feel our band is one of the best on the island. And then you have these other groups that kind of, you know, if they're like on the math team, or we're getting like one in now, it's a gaming club where kids get together and talk about, you know, playing video games and doing different things, and how do you beat things. I mean, their minds are always working. Kids today don't think like we did when we was in high school. They're so engaged with, you know, texting and tweeting and Twitter and social media stuff that they could teach us about technology. That they know how to turn things on and off. But I have no idea.
I plead guilty to that.
But it is developing. You still have different segments of groups on campus, but the nice thing about Campbell being so large, it's not that you really see that specific group, like the athletes don't only hang out here, this group only hang out here. There's really not a lot of downtime at Campbell High School besides lunch.
Because they're running from one classroom to the other.
Exactly.
Trying to figure out where to
go. You don't see it too much.
How long is your lunch period?
30 minutes.
But I mean spread out through the course of the day. When does the first meal start and the last meal?
We eat lunch all the same time. So it's all from 10:55 to 11:25.
How do you get all those kids through the job?
They prepare all the meals, and then they do like satellite stations. So a couple different buildings on campus will serve the meals. So they're already prepared. They just come basically box and go. So all kids get the same meal, and they eat and they get back to their class, because there's no way we could serve 3,100 kids in our cafeteria.
Is no trays?
No trays, all the styrofoam, like to-go containers.
Anything hot?
It's all warmed up before they go, but it's all pre-made before they send them out.
Really?
Yeah.
Jeez, I
Should come by and watch lunch. Lunch at Campbell High School is incredible. 3,100 kids all at the same lunch, and we have very limited problems.
Really?
Yeah.
That's amazing. Because we used to go, when I went, we'd go through the line, get what you want. No, I don't want that, and I can have that, and milk, chocolate milk.
Yeah.
And we actually, I mean, you tell you how government, we had a bill this year to, I don't know if it passed or not, to ban chocolate milk in the school because it's unhealthy for you. To serve only water and skim milk. I mean, the nanny state is here to stay. Those kids, their metabolisms are so high and they are burning up calories like nobody's business. But nevertheless. So we talked about that, different groups of kids, the school, the issues. What folks don't know right now is we've started a community group. We're trying to look outside the box, think outside the box, to write a grant or several grants from not just local people, primarily not local, but national organizations who could come in and provide some relief, some sort of community rallying thing that you were kind of talking about. What are we doing? And maybe, we don't know what that'll be, but certainly the money appears to be located in environmentally friendly projects. Mm-hmm. So maybe Google would build a green classroom complex of 4 classrooms, but it operates off the sun. You know, that's the kind of thing we're looking at getting. Do you have any thoughts on the stuff we talked about today? We got about 5 minutes left. I don't want to monopolize it. What is your hopes and dreams to see for Campbell in the next decade?
Well, I would hope that sooner than later we'd be able to appropriate the proper amount of funding to see a substantial improvement in Campbell High School. How we get there, that still remains to be seen. I think at this point, from a residential standpoint, I think it's going to involve creative, outside-the-box thinking, like you had just mentioned, where there's a lot more community involvement, vetted through the DOE and the Board of Education, because I really don't see, to be honest, I don't see it happening through the legislative system anytime soon.
It will be to get the legislative appropriation, say for a new building, it's going to say $20 to $30 million. And there are a lot of people down here who are all sniping for their piece of the pie to put a feather in their cap when they go home and say, oh, I've got $10 million for a recording studio. Things that aren't needed. Performing Arts Center. I mean, the arts are great. I wrote a screenplay, but it's not as important as having basic facilities for Campbell High School. That's going to have to be spelled out in the next budget. And you're right. It's going to be interesting to watch. When we talk about the school, there's 2 things. One is the school and the population, which you can control through. I really like the way you talk. You're good. You can control that. The other is the infrastructure, the actual physical buildings. When we talk about Campbell High School, we're talking about infrastructure that is dated and not up to par. That is different from your student body, which you can mold, and you sound like a very forehanded and forward-thinking leader. And I love the way you approach it with the child is our product, make them the most valuable. So you can differentiate between the 2 clearly, right?
Well, I'd hope so. I mean, I think what it all comes down to, I mean, I think if we fail kids, it's because as leaders, we fail them. If kids are failing, it's because we fail them. We have to be advocates for those kids. If they don't get it now, when? When is it going to be different? Times aren't going to get better in 10, 15 years. There's still always going to be a need. They talk about a new high school. It's 10 to 15 years away. Well, what about our kids now? And you know, and I'm still kind of new to Hawaii. I've only been here 8 years, but I hear all this, you know, ohana. Well, these are our kids. No matter what part of the island you live on, everybody should get what they need, and teachers should have classrooms, and we need to take care of what we can take care of. and educate all kids. You know, no kid left behind.
Where were you born and raised? How'd you do your education?
Born and raised in Utah.
How'd you end up at
my wife is from Hawaii, so she wanted to move back to help take care of her grandparents and parents. So we moved back, and I see it as my home for a long time. So I'm going to be an advocate for our kids, and especially the community I live in. Ewa Beach is the best place to live. We have great kids. It's not the stereotype of what people said when I first moved here. It's the best place to live on the island.
You know, and I think Bryan will concur. I agree with you, but it's also anywhere you live is what you make of it. Right?
Yeah.
Campbell is what the kids make of it, what you make of it. Like you said, you could grumble and complain, but that's a cancer, and it's a downward spiral, and it's a downward vortex, and then the kids pick up on, you know, we're all blah, 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 and then you got this negativity, and it's a dead end.
Yep.
You say we're going to do the best we can, and let's see if we can write some grants. Let's talk to Heidi Armstrong. Let's talk to the legislators. Let's see what we can do. Nonetheless, we have to accurately critique the current situation as a departure point for discussion, so people know where we're going. So you believe infrastructure is an issue. We got about a minute left. Give me 15 seconds closing thoughts.
We just need to seek the most proper opportunity to vet our concerns and whatever funding that we can appropriate in the immediate future.
And you're willing to put some hustle behind the muscle.
Absolutely.
And work and do what you can to help move it forward.
Absolutely.
Shayne, 15 seconds, closing thoughts, the state of Campbell High School.
Well, I mean, we need buildings. I mean, we need rooms to put kids in so that, you know, we can focus on what we need to focus on and take care of what we can take care of. We want to make sure we recruit and maintain the quality teachers that we have so that we're given the highest quality education possible. You know, on a note, we have a great principal, we have a great CAS, they're fighting for kids, they're doing everything they can. But again, it's going to come down to, can we get buildings, can we get air conditioning, and can we put in an athletic facility that matches what everybody else is getting?
That's right. So I want to thank you folks for watching today. We're blessed to have Shayne and Bryan Jeremiah. Until we meet again, aloha and God bless you all.